Welcome back, Defenders. Jake here. We have to quick follow up on this Russian convoy that was destroyed in Africa. The Wagner group has confirmed their fighters were killed, battling Mali rebels. Now, Mali is a landlocked country in Africa, rich in gold and uranium. And the Russians are there because they're trying to install a pro-Russian dictatorship. They want to get those resources out for themselves. So what do we know about this battle? And apparently it lasted 2 days. There was a huge sandstorm that prevented the Russians from getting out or being resupplied. And eventually the Mali rebels overtook them. Now the Wagner group is only admitting to about 20 of their fighters being killed, 5 being captured. But sources on the ground say the casualties are much higher, closer to 82 Russian mercenaries killed by these Mali rebels. And if that was the whole story, it'd be pretty interesting, but we keep getting new information. Rebels in Mali display the Ukrainian flag after the Wagner defeat. The Kyiv Post obtained an exclusive photo of Tuareg rebels posing with the Ukrainian flag after defeating the Wagner mercenaries over the weekend. Here's the group photo of the victorious Mali rebels. And there it is. Yes, they are flying the Ukrainian flag. Why? I don't think we can say for sure. But when you zoom in, there's one individual in this group who doesn't look like the others. You can tell from his skin tone on his hands, he is whiter than the fellow rebels to his left and right. So this is fueling speculation amongst Russian Telegram channels that Ukraine was responsible, that Ukrainian special forces deployed to Mali in order to ambush this Russian convoy. They've been posting this picture of Ukrainian special forces with the Ukrainian patch saying this is proof. Ukraine was in Mali and they attacked Russia. I don't think this is true, and I think it's hilarious that Russians would give Ukraine this much credit and claim they have this much capability, that they could deploy special forces to Africa and take out a Wagner convoy. But in reality, what I think is happening here is I think France is going to eventually get involved militarily with the Wagner group in West Africa. The Wagner group has been promoting and sponsoring coups all across France's old colonial empire. And I don't think France has done anything about it because they had the Paris Olympics coming up. Because the Olympics were going to be in France this year, France did not want to take military action against the Russians in West Africa. But the Olympics end in like 10 days, and I have a strong suspicion that the French are going to mobilize their military, and they're going to annihilate the Wagner group in their old colonial backyard. Just a theory, I could be wrong. President Macron politically has been weakened due to these recent elections, but he's still the president, and these are the Russians encroaching on their old colonial empire and territory. There's lots of crazy videos online, Twitter and Telegram, of this battle. I can't show bodies and I can't show violence. I linked a couple in my last video. I'll link one more down below for this video. But in this video, one of the Russians was pretending to be dead. He was kicked by a Mali rebel and then decided to run for it, and it didn't end well for that Russian. The other top story in the world is the election in Venezuela. World leaders react to disputed Venezuela election results. So Venezuela is located right here in the South Caribbean. And Venezuela used to be a very rich and prosperous country relative to their neighbors in the region. But in 2003 or 2002, Hugo Chavez took control of the country, promoting a socialist agenda. But he's a dictator. He was an authoritarian. He cracked down on individual liberties, weakened what was a healthy democracy in Venezuela, and just consolidated power and wealth for himself. He's a dictator. Now, he did die of cancer, I think in 2013, and then his deputy, Nicolas Maduro, took over. And it's just more of the same. Anytime there is authoritarian repression at home, it just stifles economic growth. When people don't feel secure about their property rights, when they don't feel like they have the freedoms to express themselves, and they don't feel like their government represents them, then the best and the brightest just leave the country. And this is what's been happening to Venezuela for the last 10 years. Since 2014, over 6 million Venezuelans have left the country, a full 20% of their population, to escape the Maduro regime. On average, 5,000 people a day flee Venezuela for neighboring countries. When we talk about the southern border here in the United States, 500,000 Venezuelans have entered the United States asking for refugee status, asylum. And these are mostly educated people. These are doctors and lawyers and civil servants that understand the threat to them if they remain in Maduro's country. So they've chosen to leave. So this was the opportunity. What happened a couple years ago is that sanctions that had been placed on Venezuela were lifted if Maduro promised to have free and fair elections. That was the deal the West made with Venezuela. And of course, he's a dictator. He has no intention of having free and fair elections. So according to the exit polling, the Democratic candidate, Edmundo Gonzalez, got 65% of the votes. But sure enough, when the votes were counted and released to the public, Maduro won with 51%. Now, dictators aren't very smart. And when you add up all the percentages of the presidential candidates, it equals 109%, which is impossible. Maduro is claiming victory. He says he won, that Gonzalez didn't win the election, but this is absurd. So, of course, Putin congratulates Venezuela's Maduro on his election victory. 109%, that's pretty good for a dictator. Putin and Xi and Kim Jong-un are very impressed. So Russia is trying to support Venezuela right now. They're trying to hold on to this enclave or outpost of authoritarianism in the Western Hemisphere. Just last month, 2 Russian warships sailed to Venezuela and docked at their port. If Russia wasn't distracted by this war in Ukraine, I think the Russian military would be doing more to try to save Maduro in Venezuela. They view him as an important ally. Here's thoughts from Garry Kasparov I want to share real quick. Another year has passed, and Assad is still there with Putin's support. Maduro will again try to hang on with Putin's support. Iran and North Korea sell Russia weapons to kill Ukrainians. China is absorbing Russian resources to strengthen Xi's own ambitions, potentially invading Taiwan. It's a war. It's a global war. As much as democracies around the world don't want to admit it, authoritarians and fascists all across the globe are coordinating and working together to undermine our democracy. As long as democracy exists anywhere in the world, they don't feel safe with their own grip on power. So yeah, there's a group chat. And Venezuela and Belarus and China and Russia and Iran and North Korea, they're coordinating. And here in the West, we need to wake up. So the people of Venezuela are trying to rise up. They're trying to fight back. They're trying to get rid of Maduro. Street protests erupt as Maduro declares himself the victor of Venezuela's election. I'll share some of these videos and links down below. Statues erected to Hugo Chavez are being torn down all across the country. Here's a video of Caracas, and you can see the fires everywhere, from street protests and rioting and people just setting stuff on fire in protest. Once again, I can't share these videos, I can't show violence, but I will link these down below if you want to see what the people of Venezuela are trying to do right now to get rid of their dictator. This is a powerful video. I do want to share this one. These are Venezuelan police officers choosing to take off their uniforms to join the protesters. They no longer want to defend their country's regime. This is what every dictator fears, that the police and the National Guard and the military that they use to oppress the people will no longer protect them. When Putin saw Gaddafi killed in Libya, I think that really scared him. And we need this to happen. We need this to happen in Belarus. We need this to happen in Russia. We need this to happen at a larger scale in Venezuela. We need the police and the National Guard and the military not to protect their dictator. If the people rise up, that's the only way you can get rid of Maduro. He has to lose the support of the military. The other top story continues to be the Paris Olympics. Olympic organizers confirm Russian journalists were stripped of their accreditation. So why would the French do this? Russia gave the opening ceremony a critical reception, with Foreign Ministry spokeswoman Maria Zakharova describing it as a massive failure. Former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev called the opening ceremony a disgusting spectacle and a freak show. So yes, it's obvious the Russian journalists there in Paris are not there to give fair and balanced coverage of the Olympics. They're all propagandists, just there to make France look bad, regardless of what the French actually say or do. So I support this. I don't think any person coming from Russia who calls themselves a journalist is actually a journalist. I also want to mention these bizarre incidents happening across Europe. Kremlin dismisses claims of Russian sabotage campaign against the Olympics. So what's been happening is fiber optic networks have been sabotaged in multiple regions across France, causing widespread internet and communication disruptions. I can't prove the Russians are behind this, but there are a lot of strange coincidences happening right now in Europe. Critical infrastructure attacked, this time in Germany. There was a rail sabotage. In Finland, a telecommunications tower was destroyed. Are these seemingly random events? Or are there Russian sympathizers or Russian agents inside the EU trying to cause havoc during the Olympic Games? And this is not a conspiracy. This is not me trying to imagine a threat. This happens every week, but we've just become numb to it. Poland says raided Russian spy network. This was back in March of this year. Australia charges married couple with spying for Russia. This was in July of this year. Denmark arrests suspected Russian spy. This was in June. And Hungary just changed their visa requirements to make it easier for Russians to get into the EU. Russians have been arrested here in the United States recently, also in Virginia. It's war. I know people in the West don't want to admit it. They want to go back to business as normal with the Chinese and the Russians. But Putin's never going back. He's never going back to business as normal. He wants his empire back. He wants the 14 former Soviet republics back under Kremlin control. And he's never going to stop. Willing agents like Viktor Orban or Donald Trump are going to help him if Putin can be good to them, if Putin can help them gain more power for themselves. This video went viral over the last 2 days. This was Russia's Navy Day, and they chose to have it in the Baltic Sea. And this got attention because this obviously looks like Nazi Sieg Heil salutes to Putin. But apparently these aren't Russian soldiers. These are, you can tell from this man's beard, but these are soldiers from India who participated in Russia's Navy Day celebration. Still a weird practice. I don't think India, they might want to reconsider this being a new naval tradition for their Navy. But why did Putin choose to have Russia's Navy Day in the Baltic Sea and not the Black Sea? And here's the chart showing all of the Black Sea fleets that the Ukrainians have destroyed in the last 2 years. Russia's Black Sea fleet no longer operates in the Black Sea. This isn't just my opinion. We got an incredible video from the State Duma deputy, Evgeny Fedorov. And I don't think this man is going to be speaking freely going forward in the future, but he had an honest moment on camera, and this is what this Russian state deputy had to say about the Black Sea Fleet. But the fact that the Russian fleet is not there as an operational mechanism on the Black Sea, it's not physically absent, but from the point of real combat presence, I believe it's a fact. Do you remember how it all started? Remember Snake Island that our Marines took so heroically? What happened to all of that? Where is the so-called control over the grain deal when all Ukrainian ships were being inspected, including with the help of our Navy? Where is it? Now Ukrainian merchant fleets bring in weapons in any quantities it wants. It wasn't like this even a year ago. Just a year ago, NATO did not bring weapons to Ukraine by ships. Now it does. Where is our fleet? It's not there. This is truly a victory for the enemy. This is simply a fact of the enemy's victory. And the fact that the ships still remain somewhere stationed in Sevastopol or Novorossiysk, they are probably there. So what does that do? They are not there from the point of view of a strategic combat unit, meaning they don't control the Black Sea. Do you understand? It's a fact of defeat, and we need to accept this defeat the way we have accepted the loss of Kherson. We surrendered Kherson. Kherson was ours. This is the same thing. It's a fact. We're not giving Ukraine enough credit. Over the last year, if we go back in time to last May or June of last year, Russia was in control of the grain deal. Their ships freely roamed the Black Sea. All Ukrainian grain ships going through Istanbul were inspected by the Russian Navy. But that wasn't good enough for Putin. Putin wanted to be bombing the port city of Izmail and Odessa. So the Russians refused to renew the Black Sea grain deal negotiated with Turkey, and they started bombing the port city of Odessa. Didn't last very long. They still occasionally bomb it, but Ukraine's getting their grain in and out. Trading a $1 million missile for a crane worth tens of thousands of dollars is actually a good trade for the Ukrainians. And in response, Ukraine just beefed up their own drone naval fleets, and now Russia's Black Sea fleet can't safely patrol the Black Sea fleet anymore. A resounding defeat. It's good someone admitted it, but I think this guy is, once again, not going to be around much longer for saying that. Let's get to the other bad news for Russia. Ukraine damaged Russia's Tu-22 M3 bomber 1,800 kilometers away from their own territory. This is by far the longest strike Ukraine has ever done. This is Murmansk up here, and there's an airfield. And Ukraine managed to get a drone to go 1,800 kilometers to damage one of their strategic bombers. Drone hits Russia's Stova oil refinery for the second time. There's about 40 of these oil refineries inside of Russia within Ukrainian drone striking range. And once again, every night, Ukraine's gonna attack something. This is where this is located on the map, by the way. Russian oil depot burns for 2 days following a Ukrainian drone strike. I did mention this in my last video, and Maybe the fire's out, I don't know, but oil depot fires can go for a while if you don't have the proper equipment to put out an oil fire. Drones set ablaze a power plant in Russia's Belgorod region. Ukrainian drones scored 2 successful strikes on Russia's power grid in Russia's Belgorod region. Russia doesn't have an answer. Passenger train derails in southern Russia, injuring dozens. There's videos online, I'll link them down below. Was this sabotage, or was this incompetence or lack of maintenance? Russia has lots of internal problems. 1 dead, 2 missing after a dam collapses in northwestern Russia. I've been seeing these videos since winter ended and all the snow melted, but this has to be like the 10th or 11th minor dam in Russia that I've seen collapse. As, once again, corruption or lack of maintenance, or nobody in Moscow cares about these villages, about these people in the rural areas of Russia's empire. If you want to see the video, I'll link it down below. Ukrainian intelligence hacks Russia's central bank. Ukraine has been conducting a major cyber attack on Russia's banking and payment systems, causing disruptions in banks, public transports, and mobile services since July 23rd. If Russia wants it to stop, they can just go back to their own country. War's over. Chinese banks reject about 80% of Russian yuan payments, according to media reports inside Russia. And I don't entirely understand what's happening here. Now that Russians don't have access to dollars and euros anymore, they have to do more international transactions in Chinese yuan. But apparently there's a liquidity crisis, and there's not enough Chinese yuan to satisfy all the payments that Russians want to make internationally. So this is kind of funny. According to sources cited by Commersant, Chinese banks routinely let Russian yuan payments delay for several weeks before ultimately rejecting them, often without providing a reason. That sounds like the Chinese. Russian businesses and individuals attempting to make the payments then lose money on commission and conversion fees and are unable to complete the transaction. Russian companies doing business in China have increasingly had to rely on intermediary services that help facilitate the transfer of money and goods, which can add anywhere between a 3 and 10% commission related to expenses. These are Chinese banks that don't want secondary sanctions from the US Treasury Department and the G7. So these Chinese banks are just refusing these transactions sometimes, forcing the Russians to go to shell companies, third-party people, willing to hide what the payment is actually for. And these intermediaries charge a fee, 3 to 10% on top of, what the bank is getting once they do the conversion. It's bad. This is economic suicide for the Russians, and it just gets worse for them every single day. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. Ukraine to receive 100 drones that were fundraised by the Latvian foreign minister. Thank you so much, the people of Latvia. Ukraine receives new batch of German Marder infantry fighting vehicles. This was Germany and Denmark, transferring 120 Marder infantry fighting vehicles, with another 20 coming soon. On top of that, Germany and Denmark hand over 8 more Leopard 1 tanks. Here's the whole list of what was in this military package. Thank you so much, the people of Germany and Denmark. The United States announces $1.7 billion security assistance package for Ukraine. $1.5 is for long-term contracts, stuff that is going to be built and eventually delivered in the future. And then $200 million in immediate aid being sent to Ukraine today. Usual stuff: ammunition for HIMARS, ammunition for air defense systems, 155 millimeter artillery rounds, javelins, the usual stuff. Good piece of news: fencer Olga Karlan wins Ukraine's first Olympic medal. She's in fencing, and she earned a bronze medal. I just want to say congratulations to her. I wish I could play a clip, but NBC is pretty fascist about protecting their copyright of video of the Olympics. So if you want to see her celebrate, or if you want to see her match point win, I'll link these videos down below. Final video I'd like to share with you guys concerns something called the Food Train Project. This is done in cooperation with the Ukrainian railway, and this train travels around the Kharkiv region preparing and giving away food for people in need. So this is a train that's been converted to a kitchen. They produce the food on the train. People with cars and trucks then come to the train to pick up food delivery for hungry people. Fantastic organization, fantastic people. That's all for this update video. Glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.